Humanity has been seeking a cure for pain throughout its entire existence, constantly looking for ways to alleviate both immediate pain after an injury as well as chronic, long-lasting pain. From early Mesopotamians first writing about their use of the poppy plant to the widespread use of opium all the way through the Victorian era, it hasn't always been a question of how to get pain relief, but rather how to get a form of pain relief that doesn't result in more damage than the source of the pain itself. It's a fine line that we continue to struggle with, though in the early 1800s, there was a man who thought that he had found the answer. This is the story of morphine, and this is Learn Something New. Friedrich Wilhelm Adamson Turner was born on June 19, 1783 in a small town in northern Germany. His father was an engineer and supported a prince that lived in the area. So Turner wanted to follow in his father's footsteps and choose a similar career, but everything changed when his parents died, leaving Friedrich and his 5 siblings to support themselves. And so, at the age of 16, he entered into an apprenticeship to an apothecary, that is, a type of early pharmacist. Although it hadn't been his original plan for his career, Turner threw himself into his work and proved to be quite adept at it. And at the age of 21, he became the first to successfully isolate and extract morphine crystals from poppy seed juice. And he hoped that this success would revolutionize medicine throughout the world. Indeed, the world would be changed, though not exactly how he may have expected. You see, the poppy plant had been closely associated with medicine for thousands of years, with records from Mesopotamia around 6,000 years ago describing the opium poppy as the plant of joy. Its use continued through history, with Egyptians recording a massive trade route for opium in 1300 BC that stretched from their capital city of Thebes to locations all across the Mediterranean Sea. Arabian physicians had been documented to use it around 800 BC, claiming it could cure anything from a common cold to insanity, and Homer even mentioned it within the text of the Odyssey. And although it's believed the Egyptians began the practice of exposing crying infants to opium to quiet them down, it continued all the way into the Victorian era until eventually the dangers of giving children opiates were recognized. Yet, despite opium's widespread use, many were hoping for a safer way to use the substance for pain relief. Which brings us back to Sir Turner, who spent years testing the substance he isolated on rats and stray dogs, noting the effects on the animals. In 1805, he was struck with a terrible toothache and became desperate for pain relief. And so, he swallowed a little bit of his creation, nearly immediately experiencing relief before falling asleep. When he awoke several hours later, he noted that it was in fact safe for human consumption. Over the next few weeks, he gathered up a group of volunteers to be experimented on, giving them 30 milligrams of the drug, all orally, since this was still 50 years before the hypodermic syringe was invented. He noticed that this amount induced a happy, lightheaded sensation, then a second dose of 30 milligrams caused excessive drowsiness and fatigue, while a third dose caused them to be confused, then sleepy to the point of passing out. He wrote in his notes that a suggested dose should be 15 milligrams, and named the substance morphium, stemming from the Greek god of sleep and dreams. His work was published and saw marginal spread throughout pharmacies in the area, and earned him an honorary doctor's degree in 1817 from Jena University, though his name for the drug was eventually updated after the term alkaloid was coined in 1818 with the suffix -ine being added. Morphium became morphine. Sir Turner was far from done though, helping the research along in isolating other alkaloids like codeine. In 1830, he would leave drug manufacturing behind, turning instead to understanding diseases, eventually coming to the conclusion that cholera could be caused by some living organism that remained unknown to science, suggesting that it might be able to be combated by boiling water before drinking it. And in a remarkable show of versatility, he also helped improve the designs of firearms and bullets for his government. But as he got older, his health began to wane. He had been ingesting morphine regularly for the majority of his life at this point, forming an addiction that drove him into chronic depression before he passed away on February 20th, 1841. In just a little over a decade after his death, his invention would reach far wider than he ever could have imagined. In 1853, a Scottish doctor named Alexander Wood invented a hypodermic syringe by attaching a hollow needle to a plunger. There had been similar needles before this, but this was the design that would reach the masses, and with it, morphine began being injected. Many believed that the drug would usher in a future of pain relief without any downsides whatsoever, but they didn't realize just how wrong they were. From the 1850s on, morphine began being given to anyone who asked, nearly regardless of the ailment. It was given when anyone said they had pain of any kind. Women were prescribed it for menstrual cramps, and men were often given it if they had trouble sleeping, told to inject and that their problems would just go away. But the use of morphine would explode as the American Civil War began. The Union Army alone issued 10 million pills to its soldiers. Injured soldiers in triage tents were given morphine for their injuries, some to the point of overdose. One surgeon for the Union Army claimed that he developed chronic diarrhea while working throughout the war and would take frequent doses of morphine as the only certain means of controlling the difficulty. Yet, throughout this, many were promoting it widely as a miracle cure-all. In 1868, Francis Anstey, editor of the Practitioner Journal, declared of morphine that of danger there is absolutely none. And so, doctors would prescribe it for temporary and chronic illnesses, for everything from asthma to morning sickness. Sometimes, doctors weren't even part of the process, as both the syringe and morphine could be purchased from the Sears and Roebuck catalog, alongside things like houses and cocaine. Across the ocean in Britain, a member of parliament was found having injected hundreds of milligrams of morphine daily, often doing it secretly while parliament was in session. And over in Paris, France, high society women were using bejeweled syringes and morphine bottles to use it recreationally, likely believing that there would be no side effects to injecting the drug. Although many addicted to the substance in America were Civil War soldiers with lifelong chronic pain after combat, it's now believed that by the late 1800s, more than 60% of all addicted were women, because of the sheer scale of things it was prescribed for, including diseases of nervous character, likely just anxiety. But that doesn't mean that morphine was without its detractors. Throughout the 1870s and 80s, medical journals began being filled with physicians' observations about morphine addiction in their patients, with one doctor writing about a patient he said had become a slave to the drug, telling him that she needed to increase her dosage to avoid feeling sick, and another doctor writing that his patients were saying that without the syringe and medicine, quote, life would be insupportable. Many doctors acknowledged these concerns, yet saw no alternative to prescribe to patients, continuing to give them a syringe and morphine, but this time telling them to try only injecting smaller amounts. However, from 1870 to 1880, per capita use of opioids, including morphine, tripled. Once seen as a miracle drug, morphine was becoming scarier with each passing year, and scientists began to look for a pain-killing alternative, as well as researching potential cures for the addiction itself. And so, in 1874, an English chemist named C.R. Wright was boiling morphine with a compound called acetic anhydride, which is a reactive molecule, and he was doing this in order to create a form of morphine that retained its pain-killing effects while being non-addictive. He noticed that when he did this, he got a stronger form of morphine. He believed that this was what he was trying to create, and immediately went public with the substance. It gained popularity in Germany first, giving it the name we now know it by here today, heroin, derived from the German word heroic, meaning heroic. Because it was observed in those addicted to morphine that would take the new drug, they would no longer have any desire for morphine, only now because they became addicted to the far more powerful drug. Seeing the possibilities for a more powerful painkiller and an addiction remedy, in 1898 the Bayer Company began selling the drug to the masses. You could even buy it from a Sears and Roebuck catalog. And so, the cycle began again. Now, with an even more dangerous drug entering into public consumption. But that's a story for another video. Thanks for watching. If you feel like you learned something new, consider giving the video a like. And a very special thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. But as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.